It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. The lights are up, the tree is decorated, and Hallmark's on the verge of discovering just how many movies you can make with a single movie plot. Welcome back to the CoMo Comic Books channel. I'm your festive host, Drew, and today we're wrapping up the year with a sleigh full of holiday cheer. So get ready and we'll unwrap some Yuletide treasures together. 'Tis the season to be nerdy, my friends, and what better way to celebrate than diving into the magical realm of Christmas comic books. I've combed through the archives, sifted through the long boxes, and emerged with a list that even Santa would envy. So get ready for a jolly good time as we count down CoMo's top 10 Christmas comic books. But enough with the chit-chat. Let's unwrap these festive, funny books and discover the holiday magic waiting within. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're making the nice list this year, and you don't want to miss out on the goodies. Now, let the Yuletide adventure begin. What better place to start off our list than the book where it all began, Famous Funnies number 5. Published in December 1934, Famous Funnies 5 is not only just the 10th comic book that was ever published, it's also the first comic book to include a Christmas story, which was titled Fanny Takes Advantage of Santa. This story was written by Sol Hess and was drawn by Wallace Carlson and was originally printed in the Neb's comic book strip. In the earliest days of comic book publishing, the contents of comic books were often just collections of comic strips that had previously been published in different newspapers' funny sections. In addition to the first Christmas story, we also get the very first ever Christmas cover and the first appearance and cover appearance of Santa Claus. Due to its age, there aren't a lot of copies of this thing floating around, which translates into a pretty limited sales history for us to look at here. That said, we do have 4 sales reporting on GPA within the last 12 months. The sales were bookended with a CGC 6.0 selling in December 2022 for $2,300 and a CGC 1.5 selling in July 2023 for just $432. Coming in at the number 9 spot is one of DC's earliest holiday covers, courtesy of the seasonal title comic Cavalcade's 9th issue. Technically, this book sports a winter 1944 publication date, but it was actually released to the stands on November 28, 1944, which means this great E.E. Hibbard, Harry Peter, and Martin Nadell cover was doing its part to spread Christmas cheer during the final holiday season of World War II. Why 3 artists, you might ask? Apparently it was necessary for each of them to draw their respective characters. Hibbard, The Flash, Peter, Wonder Woman, and Nadell, Green Lantern. DC's first holiday cover was Comic Cavalcade number 5 from 1943, and the title would go on to have a number of other memorable holiday covers, ranging from other great Christmas covers for issues 13 and 19, to the classic Jack-o'-lantern cover from issue 12, and let's not forget the Thanksgiving classic issue number 18 with a giant turkey on the cover. With 2 sales reporting on GPA in the last 12 months, this issue is surprisingly affordable with a CGC 4.0 selling in September 2023 for just $441, while a CGC 5.0 sold in July 2023 for $720. As with most seasonally relevant collectibles, it's always best to track a Christmas-themed book down after or well before the season rolls around. The buyers for these 2 books definitely planned accordingly. There are some recent sales for raw copies on eBay with a well-presenting lower grade copy with a detached cover selling for just $200. Next up, our number 8 book makes you want to thumpity thump thump because 4-color 359 introduces everyone's favorite snowman, Frosty. As a kid that was born in the 80s, that grew up in the 90s, I was lucky enough to get in on the heyday of the Rankin Bass Claymation Holiday Specials reruns. You know, they'd run them every year. The Frosty the Snowman special, which debuted in 1969, still airs each year, with Frosty scheduled to play on December 12th this year, if my research is correct. And speaking of research, do you know where Frosty came from? Well, ultimately, what I figured out is that we have Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to thank for this jolly happy soul. After Gene Autry recorded Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in 1949, the tune, which was based on this character that was created for retailer Montgomery Ward back in the 30s, the song became a smash hit, topping the charts as the calendar flipped over from the late 40s to the early 50s, And it turns out that the music industry back then is pretty much like every industry today. When somebody finds something that works, everybody all of a sudden starts doing that. Proving that lightning occasionally does strike twice, the song Frosty the Snowman was penned in 1950 and was recorded by multiple artists for the 1950 holiday season. 4-Color 359 was published in November 1951 for the character's second year of existence and his first comic book appearance. However, there was a golden book that was published in 1950 that preceded it. 4-Color 359 contained a number of stories featuring our title character, all of which were wrapped with the Dan Gormley cover. Frosty continued to be a hit and would receive a fresh issue of 4-Color comics each year for many, many years. In the past 12 months, we've had 5 sales of CGC graded copies reporting on GPA, but there's no shortage of raw copies that are available on eBay at this exact moment. In September 2023, a CGC 4.0 copy sold for just $100, while back in February 2023, a CGC 9.6 sold for $1,320. This is a fun book that can help you bring a little comic book flair to your holiday decorations. Just sneak a copy in on the mantle, I'm sure it'll be fine. Just 7 issues after the final World War II cover for Action Comics, the very first Action Comics Christmas cover was published with Action Comics 93. We're not going to talk about that book today. That's just a little bonus tidbit for you. Our actual number 7 book is Action Comics 105, the second ever Christmas cover for the title. I kind of went back and forth on these two, and I ultimately landed on 105 because of this now classic Wayne Boring Santa Claus cover. Despite the fact that I greatly prefer the big Action Comics logo that was seen on Action 93 over the revised, smaller logo that debuted in June 1946's Action Comics 99. Anyway, Action 105, which was cover dated for February 1947, but it was actually released on December 12, 1946, was our apparently now obligatory Christmas cover for the 1946 holiday season. Unlike many of the Christmas issues published by DC each year, this one actually contains a holiday-centric story. Since it was the 40s, it wasn't a cheerful tale, as a guy with an absolutely ridiculous name, even by Action Comics standards, Jasper Rasper, has decided he's going to unalive Santa because he hates Christmas. Naturally. The story was written by Jerry Siegel, so, I guess we'll give it a pass, and it was drawn by John Sakella, who was ghosting for Joe Shuster. GPA is reporting only 2 sales in the most recent 12 months for this issue, but I'm fairly surprised at how reasonably priced they seem to be given the popularity of this book. In September 2023, a CGC 7.0 copy sold for $780, while in July 2023, a CGC 1.0 closed at just $200. Christmas in July indeed. Remember 2 books ago when I mentioned Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? Well, here's the payoff for that. In the number 6 spot is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer number 1. Kinda. You see, DC like to be cute on occasion, and they do things like not put numbers on things. So while technically this is the first issue of a 12-issue series that would run from 1950 to 1961, every single one of these issues is an NN, or a no number. Our 1950 issue of Rudolph was cover dated for January 1951, but it actually hit the stands before Halloween 1950. And to think we still yell at the sky when we walk into a store and see Christmas merch out before Halloween today. Turns out we've been doing it forever. I've still got to give it to the creative team for this issue though. Writer Cy Reed and artist Rube Grossman, who did both the cover and interior main story art, turned in a whopper of a story. This thing clocks in at 42 pages of reindeer game fun. If the kiddies ever managed to finish reading that beefy story, there were also 6 pages worth of activities, including a maze, some connect the dots, and other things we used to entertain ourselves with before the screens took over. Surprisingly, we have a fair amount of activity for Rudolph number 1, as there have been 3 sales reporting on GPA in just the last 90 days alone. The price compression is strong with this one, as the 3 sales ranging from 1.0 to 6.5 are only separated by a total of $282. September saw the sale of a CGC 6.5 come in at $312, while October gave us a 1.0 sale and a sale in 4.5 as well, with realized values of $30 and $195 respectively. At this point, you may have noticed something, as we're halfway through the list already. Something unusual, something out of place. That's right, there hasn't been a single Marvel Comics issue on this list up to this point, which is pretty weird, right? I can tell you one thing, Martin Goodman was on Santa's naughty list, but don't worry, we've got a good thing going here and we're not going to ruin it with our number 5 book, because we've got more holiday fun from DC coming your way with Sensation Comics number 38. Cover dated February 1945, this Wonder Woman cover is one of DC's most iconic Christmas covers of the Golden Age. The cover, which depicts Wonder Woman playing Santa Claus and mirrors elements of the story as she winds up tangling with a band of gold thieves while trying to give some downtrodden children a nice Christmas. Typical Wonder Woman stuff. The 13-page story, Racketeers Kidnap Miss Santa Claus, was written by William Marston and drawn by Harry Peter, who also provided us with this now classic cover. 2023 is apparently the year of holding on to your Sensation 38, as there's only been a single sale that's reported to GPA in the most recent 12 months.
Serious?
Unfortunately, that was back in March 2023 when the CGC 9.6 Promise Collection Pedigree copy sold for $8,400. Now, while that sounds like a lot, that's actually a bit of a haircut for this book, as it originally sold in November 2021 for $10,200. I didn't suspect that this would be one of the more challenging books to acquire on the list, as popular as it is, but opportunities have been certainly few and far between recently. One of the most well-known Christmas tales is that of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol. Whether you prefer one of the many early Scrooge films from the early days of Hollywood, The Muppet Christmas Carol, or my personal favorite, the twisted 1988 adaptation Scrooge, starring Bill Murray, A Christmas Carol story is a major part of what we consider Christmas in the modern day. So what better way to acknowledge its importance than by celebrating its first adaptation in a comic book, which can be found in our number 4 book, Santa Claus Funnies number 1, from the 1942 series. This book grabs your attention as soon as you lay eyes on it. The first thing you'll notice is that Santa is careening through the sky in a shiny new army jeep. Did I mention that it's 1942? The best part is that this is actually a wraparound cover, so when you flip the book over, you see that Santa has just ditched his traditional sleigh and reindeer for this jeep. Under the cover, you'll find 64 pages of classic Christmas fun, including comic book adaptations of The Night Before Christmas, Hans Christian Andersen's The Fir Tree, and the star of the show, a 15-page adaptation of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol. Unfortunately, we're not sure what writer adapted the story, but we do know that artist George Kerr illustrated this slimmed-down tale of Ebenezer Scrooge. While I couldn't find any record of this book on GPA at all, and no recent sales were reporting on eBay either, but there are a few copies currently for sale on eBay ranging from $230 to $545. Like many of the other DC superheroes, The Dark Knight was no stranger to the Christmas cover during the peak of the Golden Age. Beginning with Batman 27 that hit the stands during the 1944 Christmas season, the Caped Crusader began a series of yearly Christmas covers, including my favorite and our number 3 book, Batman number 33. To me, this is the perfect Batman and Robin Christmas cover. You've got Robin doing Robin stuff, like knocking over a completely decorated Christmas tree. Well, save for the star, which is what he was attempting to put on when gravity kicked in. Naturally, a shocked Batman's just kind of standing there watching all this happen. It's simply more lighthearted than many preceding covers, and it's right in line with the softening tone the book would take on in the post-war era. It's a little more goofy, but it's just good old-fashioned fun. Artist Dick Sprang provided the cover art, while the interior art was provided by Win Mortimer, who was ghosting for Bob Kane. This issue contained 3 different 12 or 13-page Batman stories. Unfortunately, the writer's only known for the first story, Crime on the Wing, which was provided by Bill Finger. There are 8 CGC copies reporting on GPA in the last 12 months for this February 1946 issue of Batman. Most recently, a CGC 1.8 copy sold in September 2023 for $360, while August was the hot month for this book as there were 3 sales in the following grades: 3.5, 4.5, and 8.5 within the month. The 8.5 brought in an impressive $5,475, which is a record price in grade, blowing the previous high sale of $1,860 from back in 2019 out of the water. The 4.5 copy sold for $580, and finally the CGC 3.5 sold for a modest $360, dropping below half the price of the previous sale in November 2022 at $870. That sale was definitely an outlier though, as the August 2023 sale is quite comparable to the March, August, and September 2022 sales, which ranged from $388 to $440. One of the most famous Christmas stories in all of comic books is Christmas on Bear Mountain, which was originally published in our number 2 book, 4-Color 178. Artist Dan Gormley drew the issue's cover, but the real star of the show, Christmas on Bear Mountain, was both written and drawn by the legendary Disney artist Carl Barks. What makes this story so special is that it's the first appearance of Disney's Uncle Scrooge. Scrooge would go on to become one of the most well-known Disney characters, and it all started with this December 1947 issue. 4-Color 178 is a bit of an oddity when it comes to Golden Age books, as it has an abundance of sales in the most recent 12 months, with 17 sales of CGC graded copies reporting on GPA, and that doesn't count all the raw sales that happened over on eBay and other places. Most recently, a CGC 5.0 copy sold for $780 in October 2023. Earlier this fall, a CGC 7.5 sold for $2,100, and a CGC 4.0 sold for $800. And last but not least, a CGC 2.5 sold for $601. All of these sales were in September 2023. I admit the cover to this one isn't as Christmassy as a lot of the books on our list, but this is by far the most significant Christmas comic book issue the hobby has seen to date, with that major first appearance of Uncle Scrooge. And now, let's take a moment to recognize a few honorable mentions. These are great Christmas books, but they weren't quite strong enough to make the main list. Honorable mention number 1 goes to Spawn number 39. What can I say here? If you grew up in the 90s, you probably think Spawn is cool. So Spawn in a Santa costume? Yeah, that's pretty cool too. Honorable mention number 2, Witching Hour 28. A skeleton in a Santa suit? That's an eye-catching visual, and with Bronze Age horror holding on to its status as the flavor of the week, yeah, it was worth a mention. Honorable mention number 3 is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 5 variant. This is from the more recent IDW series, and I absolutely love this variant. We all know I'm a Turtle fan, and I was lucky enough to get one of these the day it came out. This is easily one of my favorite modern winter or holiday related covers. Honorable mention number 5 goes to Holiday Comics number 5. It's an L.B. Cole Christmas cover. What more can you say? L.B. Cole is one of the most in Golden Age artists at the moment, and with books like Holiday Comics 5, you can reclaim the parts of your soul that were scared away by some of his pre-code horror covers back during spooky season. Our last honorable mention goes to Bizarre Adventures number 34. Finally, we've got a Marvel book. The last issue of Marvel's magazine series, Bizarre Adventures, gave us a fantastic holiday-themed cover from artist Joe Jusko. This guy would go on to spend a good chunk of the early 90s doing art for the most amazing Marvel trading card series ever, Marvel Masterpieces. And you may be familiar with those, as in recent years this card art was utilized by Marvel for a series of variant covers. Topping my list of the top 10 Christmas books is a book that will knock your block off. Vault of Horror number 35. Let's be honest, the moment you clicked on this video, you probably knew what book would be here. I knew it before I even started writing this video. Mrs. CoMo knew it before I even recorded the video. My guy, Johnny Craig, was absolutely on fire in 1953 and 1954. Just prior to the release of Vault of Horror 35, which was the February-March issue of the title, Crime Suspense Stories 20 hit the stands. Then, following the release of Vault of Horror 35 the next month, the infamous April and May issue 22 of Crime Suspense Stories was released, and all hell broke loose. But let's get back to Vault 35. While the Christmas story inside Vault 35 doesn't line up with the scene depicted on the cover, it is nonetheless an absolute classic EC tale titled "And All Through the House." In fact, it's such an iconic story, it was the second EC story adapted for the screen for the HBO TV show Tales from the Crypt. The issue also had a second story titled Beauty Rest, which was adapted for the show's 4th season. With this issue's popularity, we have no shortage of sales in the last 12 months, with 12 sales reporting on GPA. Prices are trending up across the board, and we've crossed a threshold on the CGC 6.0 grade, as the most recent sale in November 2023 set a record in grade, crossing over the $2,000 mark for the first time with a sale at $2,188. Another November 2023 sale in the 5.0 grade performed well, closing at $1,725, which is also a new record in grade. This is a video I've been wanting to get together for a couple of years now, so I hope you enjoyed the dive into not just iconic Christmas covers, but also some significant issues related to Christmas and the characters we associate with the season. Collecting Christmas covers, especially Golden Age Christmas covers, is one of the many collecting side quests I've discussed over the years here on the channel. There are so many more great holiday covers out there too, so I could easily make this a new list every year for several years running. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Whether you celebrate Christmas or one of the many other holidays that make up the holiday season, Festivus included, I wish you well as we begin to close out 2023. So until next time, may your comics be bagged, boarded, and brimming with holiday spirit. Collect responsibly. I'll see you in the next video.